What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with another Destiny 2 video. It's time once again for Community Feels. This is a new format to round up news and info about D2 every week. So we've got discussion about things like the event schedule for the game, super good advice and PSAs from the community. We'll cover some crazy builds, infinite loot, apparent stealthy additions to Gambit, and a handful of other things. So if you enjoy it, give me your thoughts down in the comment section, but now let's get into it. Starting out with an update that'll be interesting for some Destiny 2 players, and it includes a mention of Marathon, because when some users indicated that they were hesitant to pay $40 for Marathon over fears around how long Bungie will actually support the game, Bungie did say, "We're planning for the long haul and we'll have a roadmap shortly before launch." This is where it gets interesting, of course, because Destiny players have been waiting for a roadmap since last September. And immediately, there were a lot of comments pointing out that we have not had the Destiny roadmap, and that if we see the Marathon roadmap drop before that, it will leave a bad taste for a lot of Destiny players. Obviously, we can only speculate as to whether that will happen, but I think sentiment around Destiny 2 will actively get worse if Bungie do drop a roadmap for Marathon without talking anymore about the future of D2. So we'll just have to see how it goes, but share your thoughts below. It's also interesting how the community interacts with Marathon in general, because I see some high-level creators that cover Destiny talk about Marathon and they're pretty successful with it, whereas others, that includes myself, frankly, even mention Marathon and get torn down immediately. It's really hard to kind of navigate these sort of sub-communities and the sentiment around different components of what Bungie are actually publishing. If you have any thoughts on that, let us know in the comment section, but hopefully at the very latest we'll get news about Destiny's future before March, and I do hope it's before Marathon, because we may be in a situation where a lot of players are left with the sense that Bungie are kind of moving on. I hope that's not the case, but I'm interested to see your comments below. Moving on though, discussion about the next update for Destiny 2. The major update coming in March, of course there'll be patches in between and events, but potential interesting conversation about the narrative. Bungie had said that Dredge and Bael will return for future Destiny 2 stories, where they'd stated it's a character we want to take with us outside of Renegades. So we are going to see Bael again, and looking at the details that Bungie accidentally slipped into the game for Shadow and Order during the Renegades update, it will apparently involve dredging, where we'll race the dredging to a weapon of shadowy legend while storming a Hive weapons foundry. That probably links to activity content, but it could be firstly that we see more of Dredge and Bael in that update, although based on Ash and Iron, the narrative may be pretty sketchy. Outside of that, it seems that Bael could indeed be a character for upcoming expansion content like Shattered Cycle and The Alchemist, so I look forward to seeing what that could be about. Another brief mention here, but I posted a video the other day about infinite behemoths in the Lawless Frontier, and not entirely sure how it works, but you can actually throw your behemoth coin, your renegade ability, down on the ground next to a teammate. Then if you move away from it, and importantly look away from it, for some reason, often they'll spawn in without a transport charter, which is the kind of timer for how long the vehicle will actually last, and that basically means you can use it infinitely. So if you missed that and you want to try it out, I'll link the video for it down below. Onto a discussion that's had a lot of prevalence in the community over the last week or so though. Platypus posted to Reddit here, Bungie needs to sort out their event calendar. They've confirmed that Arms Week is in January. But they point out a lot of players are asking why we don't get more Iron Banner events. It is kind of weird because we only got one during the last season. Hopefully we'll get more than that this season, especially given that there are plenty of quiet weeks to actually fill in. And they argue that the whole point of having more events was less empty weeks with nothing. Although somehow it feels like we have more empty weeks right now. And I guess to an extent, some of that is exacerbated by the fact that Bungie had a break for the holiday period. They also came back with the first twit of the year, seemingly without much of a plan with regards to discussing, the kind of event calendar and stuff like that. I do totally agree though. While it's probably not realistic to expect events every single week, more specifics about the timings and, indeed, more actual events would be nice. And no, we don't have confirmation about when Iron Banner will actually return this season. But we've given the feedback to Bungie, so we'll see what they have to say. A kind of unexpected update here that I haven't really looked into too much, but a lot of players seem to be talking about it on this thread. Apparently, there are some new voice lines in Gambit, seemingly. And the thread here on Reddit actually says, are these new lines or is my brain playing tricks on me? A lot of folks in the comments seem to be saying that yes, there do appear to be new voice lines in Gambit. Most of us probably wouldn't notice because it's not the most played playlist in the game, but Bungie had indicated that we'll revisit Gambit at some point in the future, with it being on a sort of hiatus where it doesn't really get a lot of support. So who knows, maybe they've done some early work to kind of update some of the voice lines. Keep in mind, if they're referencing invaders and the portal and things like that, they may actually be pulled directly from Lawless Frontier, but yeah, if you've had any experience of that, or you fancy jumping in to see if you can hear any of them, let me know in the comment section what you find. On the subject of invaders though, the Dragon's Blaze on Reddit pointed out, always watch your radar and keep your enemy pinned, otherwise they can and will steal your mech. We can see right here an invader drops the mech on the ground, and this player actually jumps in and steals it, then kills them with it. How rude is that? So just bear in mind it is always a possibility. Otherwise, quick mention on the fashion side, but it's possible to get an invisible Warlock bond this week if you pick up the Shadow Broker bond. That ornament's available in the Eververse store. If you apply the primer shader to it, it basically just completely vanishes. I totally underestimated the urge for Warlocks to have invisible bonds, but I've seen this brought up quite a few times this week, so if you didn't know, there you go. Another kind of neat thing here associated with Renegades, but players point out, at Tharsis Outpost there are still some assets from the original D1 map, which was actually the Buried City area of Mars. Credit to Sushi Juice on Reddit for sharing this, but if you remember that area on Mars, you could go back into the abandoned subway station there, and some of the kind of skyline, the buildings around it, are still present. In the Tharsis Outpost version of the map, it may not be immediately obvious because they've added so much new kind of architecture to it, but interestingly, out of bounds, it also still contains some of the elements that were kind of present on the way down to that subway station in the Buried City. So cool to get a look at it, and indeed, it is actually built on top of that off-world transit area of the Buried City from the D1 Mars map, so pretty cool that this thread points it out. Pretty cool thread here sharing what 99% damage reduction looks like in Destiny 2 from I Am Groot. And yeah, it's pretty obvious from the gameplay, they're taking very minimal damage. A lot of the time, they've actually got their overshield, of course, but outside of that, their base health is pretty ridiculous. And they did actually share a dim link as well as a full build video, so I'll link that thread down below if you're looking for something with supreme amounts of damage reduction for your hunter. Well worth a look, and it supports some smaller creators as well, so check it out. Next up though, the discussion about Xur, who apparently needs some love. I do actually agree with this. Of course, when they added exotic class items to the loot pool, as well as a bunch of seasonal weapons to Xur, it did actually become somewhat more interesting, but outside of perhaps for very new players or rare opportunities at picking up, old stuff that we can no longer obtain easily, safe to say Xur just doesn't have the excitement that he once did. At the same time though, when you look at weapons currently in the game, you've got Zavala selling stuff, drops absolutely raining from the sky in activities, tier 5s everywhere. So I think another valid question is, how can they actually make Xur interesting, even if they add new loot to it, right? The loot in the game right now is just absurd in terms of drop rates. Maybe an interesting thing would be if Xur could kind of re-roll armor pieces a certain amount of times a week or something like that, if you were looking for god roll stats on a particular build. It wouldn't necessarily be super exciting, but it would have some utility. Otherwise, you'll have to give me your thoughts on what could be done with Xur down in the comments section. Another mention here from Beginning Self, but the Prophecy first secret chest is actually indefinitely farmable, which makes sense now given that there are no loot lockouts, but if you happen to want to farm any Prophecy loot, as a catch-up or after specific rolls or something, you can get loads of the SMG and Pulse Rifle drops in there. To be honest, in the last couple of weeks I've started using some older weapons again, now that I'm not really stressing about the power grind or any stuff like that, avant-garde or any of the new gear boosts. It may be something to think about a little more for kind of general play. Someone also pointed out, I think it's crazy that heavy frame Rasputin units were rarely used and forgotten about. Do you remember those guys? We saw them quite a bit back in Season of the Seraph. They were actually pretty cool. It'd be neat if Bungie could utilize them again, or, given they've done a bunch of work with vehicles for Renegades, maybe we could actually pilot them at some point. That would be bonkers. Otherwise though, DMG asked on Twitter, how are you feeling about the rewards pass? I'm actually poorly positioned to really talk about this. I'm not massively excited by a lot of cosmetic stuff in Destiny 2, which probably sounds weird. I do tend to get most excited by things that are earned through gameplay and also look very cool. Not that I'm saying there are not cool or useful things in the season passes though, so if you want to give feedback on that, you can do it on X. Just remember to be nice. You can also do it down in the comment section here as well, if you like. But there we go, that's a roundup of a bunch of stuff that's been discussed in the last week or so by the community. So feel free to get involved in the comment section, let us know how you're feeling about the game currently. If you still want to stay up to date with news, updates and all that good stuff, hit subscribe. I apologise for sounding so bunged up. I still have a case of dreadful man flu. We're getting through it though. For now, I appreciate you watching and I hope you have an awesome day.